We will continue with this session of the development of the foregut. In this section, we will be dealing with the development of liver, gallbladder, pancreas, and spleen. So, firstly, is the development of the liver and the gallbladder. So, this one is a primitive gut which is lined by the endoderm. So, endodermal lining of the foregut forms an outgrowth which is called the hepatic diverticulum into the surrounding mesoderm of the septum transversum. Now, the cords of hepatoblast, called the hepatic cords, from the hepatic diverticulum, they will grow into the mesoderm of the septum transversum. So, these hepatic cords, they will arrange themselves around the vitelline veins and the umbilical veins, and these veins were forming the hepatic sinusoids. So, these uh, sinusoids, they are derived from the umbilical veins and the vitelline veins, and they are surrounded by the hepatocytes, which are derived from the endoderm of the primitive gut. Then the liver, it will bulge into the abdominal cavity, thereby stretching the septum transversum to form the ventral mesentery, consisting of the falciform ligament anteriorly and the lesser omentum posteriorly, that is between the stomach and the liver. So this liver, it divides the ventral mesentery into two parts. So now the two ligaments will be forming the falciform ligament, which is a shaped fold between the anterior abdominal wall and the liver. So this contains the left umbilical vein, so which regresses after the birth, and it will form the ligamentum teres. Then the lesser omentum can be divided into two parts. One is the hepatogastric ligament, which is cranially, and the hepatoduodenal ligament, which is lying caudally. In this hepatoduodenal ligament, it is having the portal triad, that is the bile duct, portal vein, and hepatic artery. That is known as portal triad. The gallbladder and the bile duct. So the connection between the hepatic diverticulum and the foregut, it narrows to form the bile duct. So an outgrowth from the bile duct, it gives rise to the gallbladder and gallbladder rudiment and the cystic duct. So what are the derivatives of the ventral mesentery? So liver, it contacts with the septum transversum. So there is a cranial part of the mesentery, it is absent. As the liver is, it is in direct contact with the central tendon. Now this central tendon, it is derived from the so the liver, uh, the septum transversum contributes to the development of central tendon of the diaphragm. So since the liver, it is in close contact with the septum transversum, the cranial part of the mesentery, it is absent, where the liver is in direct contact with the central tendon. So that part forms the bare area of the liver, and the caudal part of the ventral mesentery will form the visceral peritoneum, which is closely adhering to the liver. Now, what happens after the formation of the bare area? Because there is no peritoneal fold at that area, there is a direct, and it forms a site where directly the hepatic portal system and the systemic veins of the diaphragm, they will anastomose with each other. So that is the clinical importance of the bare area of the liver. Now, what happens? The peritoneal reflection on the inferior surface of the diaphragm, it encircles the bare area like a crown. So that is why these ligaments, which is surrounding the bare area of the liver, they will form the coronary ligament. Then the falciform ligament, as you all know, it is the third derivative of the ventral mesentery, because of the formation of the liver between the intervening ventral in the ventral mesentery. It will divide the ventral mesentery into a sickle-shaped fold, which is falciform ligament, which connects the liver to the anterior abdominal wall, and posterior to the liver will be the lesser omentum, which is again divided into hepatogastric ligament, which is cranial part, and the hepatoduodenal ligament, which is the caudal part. So over here you can see this one is the developing liver, this one is the falciform ligament, this is the part which is coming in close contact with the septum transversum. This one is the ventral mesentery. So cranial part will be the gastric part, the caudal part will be the hepatoduodenal part. Now over here, this is the part which is closely adherent to the septum transversum. So this forms the bare area of the liver, and the peritoneal reflection which surrounds it will form the coronary ligament. This one is the falciform ligament, and also the part of the mesentery which is caudal to this will form the visceral peritoneum. And this one is the falciform ligament, I've already told you. Now the anomalies of the gallbladder. So there may be intrahepatic gallbladder, which occurs when the gallbladder rudiment advances beyond the hepatic diverticulum and it gets buried into the substance of the liver. Then there is a floating gallbladder, which occurs when the gallbladder rudiment it lags behind the hepatic diverticulum and thereby it becomes suspended from the liver by a mesentery of itself. Then a floating gallbladder, it is at a risk for torsion. Then there are certain other developmental anomalies of the gallbladder in which there may be two gallbladder or the duplicated. There may be two lobes, that is a bilobed gallbladder. Then there is another diverticular from the cystic duct, that is the uh, diverticula of the bladder. Then there is a septation of the gallbladder. Now there is a developmental anomalies of the cystic duct. Either it may be opening into the common hepatic duct, or it may open into a right hepatic duct, or it may be opening into the common hepatic duct at an acute angle, or it may be winding around that common hepatic duct from its interior or the posterior side. So all these anomalies may lead to the obstruction of the bile and may lead to jaundice, or maybe sometimes it may give rise to the bile stone as well. Then there may be biliary atresia, which is defined as the obliteration of the extrahepatic or intrahepatic ducts. So the ducts are replaced by fibrotic tissue due to acute uh, and chronic inflammation. And the clinical findings include progressive neonatal jaundice with onset soon after the birth. They may be white, clay colored stool, and dark colored urine. So average survival time is around 1 year to 1.5 years, and there is 100% mortality rate in such cases, which can be prevented by the liver transplantation. Now, the development of the pancreas. This is the most frequent question which is being asked to you all. So this primitive gut, it gives this foregut, it gives two buds. One is the ventral bud and one is the dorsal pancreatic bud. So ventral bud is given in the ventral mesentery, the dorsal bud is given in the dorsal mesentery. Then both the pancreatic buds, they are the endodermal tubules. So they are surrounded by the mesoderm, which branch repeatedly to form the acinar cells and the ducts. So acinar cells and ducts, they are endodermal in origin. The stroma, it is mesodermal in origin since they are developing into the mesenteries. Now there are isolated clumps of endodermal cells but from the tubules, and they accumulate within the mesoderm to form the islet cells. Now, because of the 90-degree rotation of the stomach, what happens? This ventral bud will rotate and it will come to lie just beneath this dorsal bud. So, now the both of the buds, they will fuse and they will form the adult pancreas. So, what are the derivatives of the buds? The ventral bud, it will give rise to the head and the uncinate process of the pancreas. The dorsal bud, it gives rise to the remaining portion, that is the head, body and the tail of the pancreas. Now, the main pancreatic duct, it is formed by the anastomosis of the distal two-thirds of the dorsal pancreatic duct, and as the proximal one-third normally regresses, and the proximal one-third of the pancreatic duct of the ventral bud. So both of the duct system, they will fuse and they will open into the duodenum as the ampulla of Vater. Now, what are the anomalies? There may be accessory pancreatic duct. So it develops when the proximal one-third of the dorsal pancreatic duct persists. So this one is the normal one. So when the proximal one-third persists, it will open into the duodenum through a minor papillae at a site proximal to the ampulla of Vater. And the incidence is around in 33% of the cases. Then there may be pancreas diversum, in which the distal two-thirds of the dorsal pancreatic duct and the entire ventral pancreatic duct fail to anastomose. So both have their independent opening into the duodenum. So the proximal one-third of the dorsal pancreatic duct persists, so thereby forming two separate duct systems. So they will be minor and the major duodenal papillae with the two openings of the duct. Now there is an annular pancreas. This is the model which is present in the department also, and you get a short note on the annular pancreas. So it arises when the ventral bud it gets duplicated. So both the buds, they will migrate in the opposite directions. So since they will migrate in the opposite direction, so they will encircle this duodenal part, and it will cause the constriction of this duodenal part. So the ring of a pancreatic tissue is formed around the duodenum, and it will lead to severe duodenal obstruction. So newborns and infants are intolerant of oral feeding, and they often have a bilious vomiting. So radiograph evidence of an annular pancreas, it is indicated by a duodenal obstruction where a double bubble is seen, as was similar is the case of duodenal stenosis. So it is one of the cause of the duodenal stenosis, the annular pancreas. Now we will come to the development of the spleen. So the spleen, it occurs as a mesenchymal condensation which is developing in the dorsal mesogastrium of the lesser sac. So the rotation of the stomach and the growth of this dorsal mesogastrium, it translocates the spleen to the left side of the abdominal cavity. So initially it was lying in the midline, and later on it gets displaced to the left side of the abdominal cavity. So the rotation of the dorsal mesogastrium also establishes a mesenteric collection called the renal splenic ligament, which is between the spleen and the kidney, and there is a portion of the dorsal mesentery between the spleen and the stomach, and this is known as the gastrosplenic ligament. So spleen is mesodermal in origin, it is not endodermal in origin. So there are certain anomalies of the spleen. There is accessory splenic tissue which is found around the spleen in gastrosplenic ligament or greater omentum and the left spermatic cord. Now the development of the spleen, it is also in various, there is certain lobulation. There are various planiculi since it is the mesenchymal condensation, and then they will fuse together. So the upper border is mainly notched. So this notching is because of the fusion of these different planiculi. So whenever there is failure of fusion of these planiculi, they will be present as their accessory splenic tissue, and the sites are gastrosplenic ligament, the greater omentum, and the left spermatic cord. So after the removal of the spleen, the accessory splenic tissue enlarge and take over the function of the lost spleen. Then there may be certain hematomas of the spleen, and there may be cysts occurring in the spleen. They may be true cysts or they may be false cysts. So these are all the anomalies of the spleen. So that completes the development of the foregut, and the next class will be on the development of the midgut.